Good morning. So today's video is a little bit early because I have a few errands to run today, so I kind of wanted to get this out of the way. And the topic is merging families. So kind of wanted to talk about this because me and my husband are kind of going through this right now, being newlyweds, and it being something that we didn't think too much about, and I don't think anybody really ever really plans for it. It's something that happens usually over time, and it really depends on the families that you join. So, digging into it a little. Sorry, I'm feeding a cat. We kind of figured this issue out right around when we'd been dating for about a year. So we were already engaged, and we were planning what to do during the holidays, which usually is very fun and exciting and involves us going to see our families, making a whole visit, doing our usual family traditions, and the shopping that comes before that. If we're going for more than a day, then it'll be all of the different activities we're going to do wherever we're going, and so on. So it started with Thanksgiving. So on Thanksgiving Day, we decided we were going to be spending it here in San Antonio, and his family is about 5 minutes down the road, and so we said we'll stay here and we will spend the day with them. And my sisters decided that they were going to come visit us. Now the reason for this is because my parents' anniversary is usually right around that weekend. So if we're not doing something big for Thanksgiving, either at home or anywhere else, or visiting somebody, because our Thanksgivings became like on location. We've had one in San Marcos, we've had one in Denton, we've had one partially in San Antonio. So it's kind of wherever the wind takes us, and since my parents have had all of their kids out of the house this last Thanksgiving, we all decided to kind of do our own thing. So we said, okay, we'll stay here for San Antonio, stay here in San Antonio for Thanksgiving, and we'll spend it with his family, and my sisters will come visit, but if we go to your house and, they want to come, they can come. Otherwise, they can stay at the house. It's kind of up to them. And so we were going to spend it with his family, which we had already agreed that if we were going to stay with them for Thanksgiving, then we would go to my family's for Christmas. So my family's house is about 3.5 hours to 4 hours, depending on traffic and weather, away from where we live. So it means that we don't get to visit anywhere near as frequently. So I have been trying more recently to schedule longer vacations there, so it's not we're going for a weekend and coming back, because that can be really exhausting, because that means we're traveling one day, and if we leave on a Friday, that means we get there a little late. Well, we get to be there all day Saturday and we come back Sunday. So it's really not a lot of time, and it can be more exhausting than it's worth. So we decided we're going to kind of keep the visits to longer weekends. So we went there for the 4th of July because it was, you can see Marvel playing in the background. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's 4 days. We went down on a Wednesday after he got off of work. We got there, we got settled in. We were there all day Thursday, Friday, all day Saturday, and then we left on Sunday. So it gave us 3 whole days of being able to actually be there. And so that's kind of been our new little thing that we've decided. It sounds pretty simple, right? You kind of discuss what's going on, what the benefits, things that maybe you don't want to be doing, like traveling on short weekends and things like that. We ran into our first snag that year, despite our planning, because our families weren't used to it. And so my parents are usually pretty chill about it, mostly just because we're so far away and they don't want it to be inconvenient for all of us to have to travel. So like I said, I live about 3.5 to 4 hours away, and my other sister lives about 8 to 9 hours away because she has to drive through Austin. She lives in Dallas, the Dallas area. So it takes her a whole day to get to them. So usually there's not too much pressure, and we will usually talk beforehand what we wanted to do. So like our Christmas about 2 years ago, when I was living in San Antonio by myself, just barely, like a couple weeks after dating my husband, we all came to San Antonio for Christmas because it was right in the middle. It's about equal travel time. So we all got there, we celebrated Christmas there for the week, and then we all went back home. So our family traditions are a little transportable. However, when his parents kind of heard about this, we were still kind of getting warmed up to each other. So when you are meeting somebody else's parents, it can be a hit or miss whether they like you for a variety of different reasons. They might not like you because you have clashing personalities. They might have issues with their children dating. They might have issues with their life choices, and they're kind of taking on you because it kind of happened around the same time, or if there's transitioning things happening or difficulties, or they were used to always spending all of their time with them and now they're only spending partial time. There can be a lot of factors that come into whether or not a family likes you. So we get along pretty well now, and honestly I like going over there. They're like my extended family now. But it kind of started off a little rocky between us. I'm not 100% sure why. I have a feeling that it might just be because this is her first son to get married. He was adopted when he was a little bit older, so they didn't have as much time with him. Lots of factors to take into consideration, but ultimately it just led to we don't get along very well. So it was a lot of learning, a lot of trying to figure it out, and I'm really big on family, so I always try to make sure that since they live about 5 minutes down the road, I would like to see them once a week. I felt that was kind of fair. It was usually for an hour or two, depending on what we were doing, so we'd either meet for lunch or we'd go over to their house for a little bit and kind of chat, and that was fine with me. It was the holidays that were a little bit more difficult, because holidays are a really special time for families, and getting to figure out whose family we would be spending it with also sometimes means whose family we weren't going to be able to spend time with, and that was difficult. It was very hard for me because I wasn't used to not seeing my family all the time, and then I went to seeing my family only occasionally, and I don't really mind traveling very much, so I used to go down there like once a month, and it went down significantly. But I was like, you know what? This is part of marriage. This is part of compromise. We learn to grow, and I still can call my parents. So I'm kind of learning to deal with it and moving with it and growing with it. So once we figured out that Thanksgiving is here, Christmas was over there, we started to tell our family. So my parents were like, okay, that sounds great. We weren't doing anything. They ended up in San Antonio for Thanksgiving only because that was their trip, so they really didn't see us except for maybe one day for breakfast. And then Christmas, they were like, okay, cool. Thanks for letting us know. They got our rooms ready and they had it all kind of prepped out for us. And so we were going to be down there. When we told his family, it was like, okay, so we were all here for Thanksgiving. We all met at his parents' house. We had food. We introduced my sisters because they did decide to come with us, and it went really well. Christmas came up. And so this is the first problem we kind of ran into communicating with each other, mostly because we went to lunch one weekend and his mom asked what we were doing for Christmas, and she looked at him because she was still kind of mostly talking to him when I was there, and he looked at me. Now, it doesn't really sound like that big of a deal, but as a communications person, I kind of study kind of how these things go, and to me it looked like he had to get my permission for things, and that's not how it works. What was really happening is he can't remember anything. So he was looking at me to remind him what we were doing, but it doesn't always look that way. So I was a little frustrated, and then she made the argument that she wanted us to be here for Christmas because he still has younger brothers and they would really wanted to be here, and they called dibs on Christmas. And in the end, we ended up compromising that we would be there all the way up through Christmas morning, and then we would leave to go to my family's house because one of my sisters was only going to be there Christmas. She was going to leave early the next day. So that meant that if we had stayed through the entire Christmas day, we wouldn't see her that weekend. And that was part of the whole going down. So I ended up getting really frustrated and upset, and it hurt because that took off a lot of days that we were going to see my family, because Christmas wasn't on the beginning of a weekend. It was kind of towards like, I think it was like Monday or Tuesday last year, and we were going to leave that Friday and then be there for an entire week and then come back whenever he was tired, we were tired, we wanted to come back. And so that way we would have enough time to do all of the family traditions and things, and I'd spend time with both of my sisters. So that threw a wrench in my plans and the plans that I had assumed that we'd agreed on. So it was difficult for me to kind of figure that out and not get super upset and talk about it. So we got through all of that. Like January, February comes around, and like I talked about in our last video, we really try to handle problems before they become major problems. And especially me being very family oriented, I saw this could be a really big problem, only because I want to see my family, and when I kind of make the plan to see them and I don't get to see them, I get really frustrated. So I brought it up one month and I said, look, when we make plans this year for holidays, we need to stick to the plans that we make for holidays. Because it's really hard for me to give up my time with them for like a last minute change. Now I can understand if extenuating circumstances come up, or maybe suddenly all of his family will be here and that doesn't really happen and my family's not quite all there. We can talk about it and compromise if we're changing the plan, but it needed to be a joint effort. So what we ended up talking about is, okay, so this year we're going to discuss where we want to spend our holidays, how we're going to do it, and then we're going to kind of see what our families are doing and see if that kind of coincides, and then we would set up our plan and it would not change. So a lot of the similar things that we did the previous year, what the big thing that we decided needed to change was when he gets asked what we're doing for holidays, instead of looking at me, he's got his phone. I'm usually really good about putting it on the calendar. He can pull it up, look at what we're doing, and tell her what's going on. Now, a lot's changed since we had that discussion. My relationship with his family has gotten a lot better. We've gotten a lot more comfortable at each other's parents' places, and we've kind of learned to adapt, and it's becoming a lot easier to kind of figure out where we're going to spend our time holiday-wise, during time off-wise, because we also need to make sure that we're spending enough time just here at the house, just us, to kind of get over the work week, to do all the small projects that we wanted to do together around the house and so on. But the whole issue ended up being a lot smaller only because we talked about it. And it's still going to be a little tricky, and it's still going to be difficult because we're going to have to figure out what we want to do for holidays, whose family we're not going to see, and how we're going to kind of make that balance work. But it was a huge thing for us that we wanted to make sure that we were doing this now, so that whenever we decided to have kids, it would be a little bit easier to figure that out. Because once you have kids, our parents suddenly become grandparents. They're going to want to see the kids all the time. They're going to want to see them as much as they can, especially when they're small, because time goes by really quickly and they grow really quickly. So we are going to have to figure out how to spend not only our time, but our time with our kids. And there has to be a balance between how much time we get to spend with them, just one-on-one, especially if we've talked about possibly me staying home with the kids. So that means I'm going to get more time with him, and on the weekends, I can't just give away his time with them. And so we would have to figure that out. We'd have to figure out which holidays we were going to spend where, why we might want to spend some holidays just here at home, mostly because we want to set up our own traditions and the things that we want to do. And we have to figure out how to make these plans work for us before we're doing it for them as well, because it's a little bit harder to do, especially with kids, to change last minute plans, because you have to prep for it. You have to make sure you have all of the food, all of the diapers, all of the everything, especially when they're little. And then you have to figure out driving arrangements. Where are we sitting? Where are we driving? How are we taking care of everybody in the car? And so on. So this was one of those issues that we didn't really think about beforehand, because it's not something that really comes up until you're in it, and it really depends on the families and all of that stuff. So it ended up working out for both of us. While this last year was a little bit rough and we figured out all of the things that we needed to fix and make easier, all in all, it ended up working out really well. We got to spend time with both of our families. I ended up learning how to put my foot down, and we had a really great time. Once this last June, we made it official. We're together. These families are now joined and merging families, and so we're gonna figure out this next round of holidays, and I'm sure it'll have its own pitfalls and frustrating things to deal with and all of that, but we've kind of learned how to do it better, and we're going to treat it as a learning experience every time, so that way every time we do this we get to learn a little bit more, we get to figure out what we want to do and make it work for us most importantly, and then work it out for everyone else afterwards. So this was a super long topic, but hopefully you learned something, and hopefully it helps you out, especially if you're feeling frustrated with your family, extended or otherwise. Maybe gives you some more tips. If you have any questions or there's anything that you would like to talk about, please let me know, and I'd love to see what the new topics are going to be. Thanks for watching.